Hello, this is the Silver Sea Stick talking to you for the first time. Today I'm going to be answering questions. Nothing much else to say about it, so let's get right into it. Ages asks, what software do you use to make your YTPs? I mainly use Adobe Premiere Pro. I also use DaVinci Resolve, but that's only to do sentence mixing, as there's less audio popping when quickly cutting between clips in Resolve than in Premiere. I also use Photoshop to create special images for YTPs and to make the thumbnails. Ages also asks, where do you get the clips as well as sound effects? I'll usually get them from YouTube by just looking up an episode of Sonic X or the cutscenes from a game, and the sound effects come from YouTube as well. I just search for the sound effect that I need and see what I can find. And if you're wondering how I download the clips, there are numerous different YouTube video downloaders out there. And one more question from Ages, do you think this can be done on a mobile device? Well, Premiere Pro can't be downloaded on a mobile device, it's only for desktop. And I don't know what sort of different video editing programs there are out there for mobile devices. Maybe some of them can do the sort of things I do with Premiere Pro, but some of what I do may be too precise to be done on a touchscreen, such as adjusting the anchor points on a mask. Before we move on, I'd just like to mention that Hot Omelet also asked me what software I use. Next, Colgate the Hedgehog asks, have you ever thought about making a YTP out of a song? If so, how would you think what would happen? Very interesting question, and as a matter of fact, I have thought about that before. Specifically doing Sonic songs, since I'm trying to have a wide variety of Sonic YTPs. As for what it would be like, I'm not exactly sure yet. I imagine it'd be pretty similar to when Peter Netter sentence mixed Can You Feel the Sunshine for the intro of his educational Sonic games video. Desert Runner 774 asks, how do you get your ideas for YTPs? And have you ever considered making tutorials on certain effects like green screen and animation? I honestly get my ideas from all over the place, but probably who's influenced my style the most is Hoffy1138, as well as Hotel Mario Ultimate Bloopers by the Mysterious Pirate. And I can't forget to mention that it was Peter Netter who really got me into YTPs. This entire channel probably wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't for him. And as for the tutorials, let's come back to that in just a second. Dimon Kami, if that's the correct way to say it, asks,
can you tell me how to mix sentences in a single source? Teach me your ways, O master.
Sentence mixing is approached differently depending on what your source is. If you're using someone who says a lot, like Michael Rosen, you're pretty much going to be able to find most of the words you need just by looking through the footage. You'll probably find that most of the words he already says. When you do need to piece together a word that he doesn't say, just remember to try to do it with as few splices as possible. If you can piece together a word using 2 separate samples, it's going to sound a lot smoother than if you do it with 4. Now, if your source is using a character that said very little, like Morshoe, you're probably going to have to piece together most of the words, a lot of times letter by letter, in which case the tip that I would give is to carefully cut the samples of sound you need to piece together the words. Like if you need an A sound, try to cut out the A sound and nothing else. Be very careful not to let any of the other sounds that come before or after it get mixed in. And a good way to make that easier is to work at a higher frame rate. If you're working in, say, 30 frames per second, you're going to be able to cut out small sounds a lot more precisely than if you're working in 20 frames per second. And as I mentioned before, I would suggest using an editing program that has minimal audio pops. And those are all the tips I was really able to come up with for sentence mixing. Because the biggest thing with sentence mixing is practice. Just keep doing it, and you should get better over time. Since that was the last question I'll be answering in this video, I'll try to do a brief tutorial on the green screening and animation that Desert Runner asked about. Okay, so for this green screen tutorial, I need to note that I'm using Premiere Pro, and this probably works differently depending on what program you're using. So green screen, or as I call it, keying, is done differently depending on the scenario. So say we want to have Michael Rosen say click nice in front of this ham sandwich. So what we would do is that we go to effects and then find the effect called Ultra Key. So we apply it to the clip and then go to the effect controls panel, click on the eyedropper, and then drag it out onto the green, and then it'll automatically get rid of all the green. Now sometimes you may want to do this with something that doesn't have a pre-made green screen of it, such as this random clip of Eggman talking from Sonic X. To make the background of this transparent, you need to be a little more creative. For this we use a different tool. Instead we use the tool called Color Key. So similarly, we grab the eyedropper and then choose the color we want to get rid of. Now if you notice, the sky is made up of a few different shades of blue as well as white. This is why I call it Chroma Key, because sometimes you want to do it with something that isn't green. So to start off, I'll choose sort of this, one of the darker shades of blue up here. So as you can see, it only got rid of a little bit. That's because now we need to go down and adjust the color tolerance in the effects panel. So we can increase the tolerance, and you'll see that it's slowly getting rid of the stuff in the picture. Now of course this isn't going to do it perfectly. As you can see, as we increase it, it's starting to get rid of some of the stuff we don't want to get rid of. So we need to choose the point just before it starts to seriously get rid of the stuff that we want. Like I'd say about 50 or so is pretty good. So we put on 50. And then what we can do is we add another color key effect. And then grab the eyedropper for that. And then put onto one of the other shades of color that we do want to get rid of. Like I'll just put it around here. And then we start increasing the tolerance for that. Now as you can see, I increased this up to a point that gets rid of quite a bit of stuff that we don't want to get rid of. I did that so I can demonstrate an interesting feature of effects in Premiere that probably a lot of people don't know about. And it's that you can add masks onto the effects. So we can click on either of these two. This one is for a circular mask or ellipse mask, and this one is for a 4-point polygon mask. So we're going to use that one. And so what this is doing is that it's only applying the chroma key or the color key to the area within the mask. So for that, we just move it up to over where what we do want to get rid of is. And we can shape it to get rid of everything in there. And so now we're almost done, but if you look very closely, the first color key got rid of a little bit of the color in his glasses. So we go to the first color key right here, and then add a mask onto that one. Now the best way to do this is to click this little box here to invert the mask. This makes it so that the color key affects everything outside of the mask. So we just invert it and then put the mask over where we don't want it to affect, which is his glasses. So now we're done. Now we have a nice clip of Eggman talking in front of a ham sandwich. Now for the animation. So we have our thing to animate here. And let's say we want it to move from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. So for that, we start at the time that we want it to start moving. So we'll just choose the beginning, which is where we already are. So I go up here, go to position, and then activate a keyframe at this point in time. And then move the thing we're animating to the starting point. Now we go to where we want our movement to stop. Let's say 2 seconds later, so 2 seconds in. And then we go up and then use the parameters again to move it to our stopping point. Now here in Premiere Pro, it automatically set another keyframe for us once we move the object. In other programs, you may or may not need to add another keyframe manually. So now if we just play through it, chip moves. Now other types of movement are done in a similar way, such as scale. So let's have him shrink in 2 seconds. So we go to the scale, activate the keyframe there, and go 2 seconds later, and then adjust the parameter to make him smaller. And there we go. And then the last basic power of animation, rotation, is done the same way as the last two. So those are my little tutorials on the green screen animation. They were by no means professional, but hopefully you were able to get at least a little bit out of my short explanations. So that's all for this Q&A. Thank you all for watching, and thank you to those who asked the questions. Goodbye.